Is that alarm thing gone off yet? Oh, it's gone off now. I didn't get it. Here you go. That's the big, wonderful world of national alarm that is a lot of fucking nonsense. Why do they want to do it? Well, it's the kind of madness that they want to inculcate into the world's population, in particular the British population now, to make them think that the government knows and will tell you when there's an emergency, whatever that emergency, the unspecific emergency that is supposed to be necessary to prepare you for. One of these emergencies, of course the ones that have been going on about emergency most of all recently, is Extinction Rebellion. But before that, don't forget, we had 2.5 years of pandemic emergency, in which everyone's locked down in the name of protecting you from the microbes. What happened to the emergency? I was waiting for it.
Did they not text you?
I thought I was going to get a siren all around and everyone go, ooh!
Oh, they sent it to your phone?
Yeah, I turned that off then, because I was videoing it. But I didn't get anything. I'm sure the people watching, some of you will have had this nonsense though. What's this? Got a little workers group here that seems to have been co-opted by the Extinction Rebellion by the look of it.
I didn't know really what I was turning up for this time, but I think from what I've seen from this small group, we've given it our 100%. So thank you so much guys for giving your energy. It's been really worthwhile coming along. Thank you.
I thought the reading out of all those names was just so moving, and the ages of all those young people who died. It just went on for so long, and it just brings it home what a disaster it was, and how cheap life is for us to follow fashion.
Yeah, I agree. It was really, I think for me, hard to hear the ages of people just because it made them more human. But it was really important to hear those names read out loud, and it was really powerful. And I think what everyone's doing here today is really important.
Yeah, this is an attempt by Extinction Rebellion to co-opt workers' struggles behind their cause.
Really made me reflect more on the protest and movement, and get so caught up with like doing the protest and trying to bring it all together. That when you actually then
Can't hear
it.
Can't hear it.
I don't know how much the audience or the people generally walking past could hear of it, but I think part of it felt really powerful. I think also again like seeing the victims, seeing the photos of them, hearing from the people that have the victims.
Okay, that's exactly what that is. That's an attempt by Extinction Rebellion. Well, they said they were changing their tactics to non-disruptive tactics and trying to make alliances. So what they've done here is they've linked up with a legitimate cause about low wages and bad conditions in the fashion industry and that type of thing, and tried to make it their own cause so they can make an alliance, as they say. Well, one good thing is it shows that the methods they've been using are pretty useless. And to be honest with you, just from a personal point of view, it seems to me that this winter has been about the worst winter in many, many years. It's just been non-stop shit weather. And so it's kind of difficult to argue, you know, climate change is so dramatic and so hot that we can't tolerate it anymore. Last summer you could get away with that when there were like, you know, a week or two of above average temperatures. But if you figure that that's compensated by 6 months of shit weather, well, I don't know which, you know, in any case, a week or two of hot weather is a very good thing. It would save us going on holiday somewhere else for a while. And could have 100,000 different causes. So, let's have a wander into Speaker's Corner. I think it's been raining earlier on, so there's a little bit of a short That's the people.
Someone to pray for you. Oh, okay. Put you on one as well.
We've got a man talking about Jesus at the gate, showing where Jesus took him somewhere to a good space. We've got a British flag over there. Well, it could be Ali. Well, who else it might be? Let's have a look. My ladder is actually over parked somewhere else. I'll have to go and get that in a bit. But I want to give like a sense of Speaker's Corner at the moment. I haven't done a little walkabout for a while. As I pointed out last week, the channel was struck. Luckily the appeal was accepted, and so now the channel has no strikes at all, which is took a lot of work to make sure that that was deleted. So we have a clean channel at the moment. Let's see if someone tries to find an excuse to undermine that. How you doing, alright? Was there a Let Women Speak event today? Oh, there is, yeah. Okay.
Like Joseph Smith, to have revelations of convenience,
Little lower.
to allow
Little lower. How you doing?
and to benefit
Not who I
from
thought.
those revelations.
Oh, why? You know, bellowing. The bellower.
How you doing, Rico?
You doing alright? Hi, Coke.
You can't call yourself a feminist and say that you know that there are men and women's bodies.
You doing alright?
Hey, hi, Kay.
You doing alright?
Got one?
No, but I'll take one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I had a great idea.
For today. That's for today.
Right now?
That's for today.
Yes.
Are you the emergency alarm?
Yes.
3 o'clock.
Yes.
What are you
We were
emergencying about?
Telling everyone to go to DJ Lippy's YouTube channel to watch us.
DJ Lippy.
DJ Lippy.
Is DJ
and
Lippy Lippy?
Art of the Empress.
Oh, so the
They're
Empress as
hosting
well.
today. Hi,
Oh,
Kay.
where?
Here, on this step ladder. We're just waiting.
Okay.
We've got the lady in the
In what?
black anorak. Behind the blue anorak, there's a slightly smaller lady with
Behind
black.
the Lippy's the black.
She is Mara Yamauchi,
Okay.
and she is an elite. She was an elite marathon runner,
All right.
and now she was doing the BBC Red Button coverage, but not this year.
Okay. Because?
I don't know. That's for her to say. But the fact is, she wasn't. And then we've got another marathon runner, she's called Jeannie Brody. Is that right? The other marathon runner who's actually run the marathon today as an elite runner. Before we get started with the speeches, I just want to take viewers here a little bit down into Speaker's Corner, the main area, just to give them a bit of an idea about what it's like here, what the atmosphere is like, and yeah, what the general vibe of the place is. Do you want to come with me? Yeah. Coming, hi, Kay.
I'll follow you around. Follow you around. You can make your observations. I mean, Bob the Builder, right? Bob the Builder. I mean, he's a nice enough guy, but look, he bellows.
Yeah.
He's a bellower. You know what I mean?
You're a regular here, aren't you?
Yeah. I mean, I bellow, but I try and get an audience at the same time. It's kind of a connection. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's difficult to justify bellowing if there's no one around you.
What's the setup like on Speaker's Corner then for those who don't come? What sort of topics do they talk about?
Well, there's a lot of Islam, a lot of Christianity fighting each other. Different sects, some of whom are very pleasant people, some of whom are nutcases. There's a Jewish sort of Zionist guy over there. There's some. There's a guy who's been sort of comedian for many years. There used to be, like as I pointed out, Charlene used to do a lesbian platform. There was one woman called Diane who used to speak on behalf of Christianity for many years. But the main thing is there's an atmosphere of people coming down here who chat with each other and talk to each other, get to know each other. There's an actual community here. But it is nowhere near enough women, put it that way. So hopefully you guys will change that whole dynamic.
Yeah, start to bring it back a little bit.
Yeah, that's right.
I think one thing we're realising is free speech is not free, and there's certain groups are more impacted by others, and I think it's been really difficult for women to have a say in the trans rights debate because we're cancelled, we're not given platforms.
To be fair here, there's another woman here who I didn't mention the other week, but Hatoun. I don't agree with her. She's anti-Islamic. She's a born-again Christian. She comes here specifically to antagonise the Islamic speakers. She was attacked here physically by a knife-wielding terrorist, basically, about a year and a half ago. But I defend her right to speak. And actually, the Islamic speakers also defended her right to speak.
Yeah.
Even though she came with a,
Just
you know,
to
Muhammad
antagonise.
T-shirt. And that's right, which I think that's the way to approach it, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Right, I think we're going to set ourselves up now. Let me
What is your channel?
It's called Make More Noise.
YouTube, Make More Noise. So if I move off from this, as I might do a bit later because I've got to go on my platform and speak, Make More Noise is where they're going to be streaming their channel. So if you want to watch more of Let Women Speak, Make More Noise is their channel. It is, Steve, right?
I know you've been too fast. I've seen this video. I remember the voting for the police to enforce all the
How you doing, Brian? All right? Doing all right? Late last week. They reinstated it. You know, they tell you to fuck it off.
It's come out this week.
Huh?
It's culture minister. It's come out this week. So if there's any violation of the use of language on social media, they should jail all the bosses of social media sites.
Oh, right. Yeah. Well, to turn them into the general census, that's the game. Turn them into the general census, that's the idea. Yeah. Because they are already. They are already, of course.
Free speech being taken every day. Free speech being taken away.
Yeah, it's a fucking madhouse.
Is it good? Am I in the shot? Can you hear? Can everybody hear okay? Is that right?
Nah, get him come in nice and close.
I believe in God, but I'm not a proper Christian. I love Christianity.
You all ready? Hello, Speaker's Corner! We are here today to speak about an issue that's affecting more and more women across the world, which is
Shut up, Bob!
It's the encroachment
Quarter!
of men's rights onto women's rights. When men identify as women, they're able to access opportunities and spaces specifically designed for women, one of which is women's sport. Today was a London Marathon, so I thought we'd celebrate this by coming to Speaker's Corner and educating people who might not have heard much about the debate, about what's actually at stake here, what the rules say, and what changes have been made most recently by a lot of British athletes and British campaigners who've been at the forefront of pushing back against the land grab made by trans rights activists. So if we could start by giving a big round of applause to all the athletes and all the women who stood up and defended women's sport. We'll have a few of them here today to discuss their sort of thoughts on this and their expertise in this area, because it's often said that this doesn't really affect women, or it doesn't really, people aren't really speaking up about it, but the problem is that when women do speak about this issue, they lose opportunities, they lose work. This isn't a fair vote, this isn't a fair system, it's a system where we're being coerced and forced and basically bullied to accept these blatantly unfair decisions that are made in high up in organisations without consulting members, without consulting the average person on the street. So we just want to bring some light onto it. The format today will be speeches about sport at the beginning, And then if you want to talk about any other issues or any other ways that transgender ideology is impacting you as a woman, when that's finished you can speak at the end. As ever, men are welcome to speak, but you will be speaking at the end after the women have spoken. Who would like to speak first? Do you want to wait for no? Okay. Brilliant. Yeah. Yeah. This is Mara. How do you pronounce it?
Yamauchi.
Yeah, Mara Yamauchi. She's a British marathon athlete. Yay!
And your top.
Got to clip it on. Okay.
Yeah.
Am I better on that step?
Probably the second one's good.
Okay.
Hello, everybody.
Thank you very much for letting me speak here today. First, I want to congratulate everyone who's participated in the London Marathon today. London's been a very special place has had a very special place in my heart. I ran it 6 times and commentated on it 10 times. In the words of former race director Dave Bedford, it's the best marathon in the world. In my book, Marathon Wisdom, please buy a copy if you haven't already, I wrote about the importance of pausing for a moment when you have some success. As an athlete, I was always too impatient, but the time after a success is important for reflecting, taking stock and enjoying your success. The fight to save women's sports is turning out to be a marathon, not a sprint. Sometimes, for example, when I read last week in a thread about nearly 50 males competing in women's cycling, it can feel like things are desperate. But we have had some successes thanks to the amazing work of grassroots women's groups and women and men who have worked tirelessly. In my own sport, athletics, we've had some success. I want to thank World Athletics for prioritising the integrity of and fairness in the female category and excluding all trans-identifying males who've been through male puberty from the female category in world ranking competitions. Similarly, I want to thank UK Athletics for their statement on the 31st of March that they too have decided to follow World Athletics and exclude all post-puberty males from the female category in events that they license. These two bodies' decisions are real milestones, and being the #1 Olympic sport, I hope all other sports will follow suit. We need to pause and enjoy this success before the moment passes. I also want to thank all the brave male and female athletes who've spoken up in defence of the female category, especially the younger ones who are still competing. However, as we all know, there's a long way to go to roll back the damage wrought on women's sport and on female athletes by gender ideology. It's sobering to think that all this time, energy and money is being spent simply to get back to where we were just a few short years ago, before gender ideology came along, when women's sport was, as it should and must be, for females only. While UK Athletics' new policy is very welcome, males are continuing to compete in the female category in distance running in the UK. Last weekend, a trans-identifying male competed in the female category in the Manchester Marathon. We assume within UKA's transitional arrangement, which allow males already registered, already entered in races to compete. We don't know how many males have entered how many races before UKA's deadline, so we may yet see females suffering unfairness in their own category. The UK Athletics ruling only covers licensed events, so unlicensed events can do what they like, and this includes parkrun. Since the 31st of March, trans-identifying males have continued to participate in parkrun in the female category. A female parkrun course record has been held for nearly 4 years by a runner-born male. 3 females have not been recognised as they should have been as holders of this record. Parkrun is all about inclusion, which of course I wholeheartedly applaud. Okay, I'll try and speak up. But male inclusion in the female category always means exclusion of females. I also want to acknowledge the tens of thousands of females who've lost things of value during the many years that males have been allowed to compete in the female category in running in the UK. This includes Club Female Athlete of the Year awards, club records, an age group title in a recent half marathon, numerous parkrun victories, and many thousands of better finish positions. This theft of things of value on a massive scale from female athletes will, to my knowledge, never be acknowledged or rectified. Therefore, I want to recognise and congratulate those runners, those female runners now. You earned all those accolades fair and square, and it's a travesty that you were robbed. Some of them probably never even knew they were suffering unfair competition. The latest instalment of gender ideology in running, the non-binary category in the marathon, has now arrived. 5 of the 6 most prestigious marathons around the World Marathon Majors, have adopted a non-binary category, including London. Some people claim that the non-binary category, if it keeps males out of the female category, then surely it must be a good thing. If they want their own category and it doesn't affect male and female categories, then why not? Let me explain briefly why I think it should have no place in sport. First, the non-binary category conflates sex, which is part of immutable material reality, with gender identity. The two are not the same. Second, identifying as non-binary is not relevant in sport. The relevant features are sex, age, disability, and in some sports, weight. That's it. We don't have sports categories for holders of other irrelevant beliefs, such as flat earther or Scientologists. Third, males run on average 10% faster than females, so it's unfair against females. And finally, with a non-binary category, males have 2 categories in which to enjoy fair competition, while females have only 1. It's 3 and 0 if males are allowed in the female category. Last Monday was the Boston Marathon, which is unique among marathons, in that almost everyone has to qualify. Boston qualifiers are therefore highly sought after and well respected. The men's qualifying times are obviously faster than the women's times. For the non-binary category, Boston decided to set qualifying times which was the same as the women's. This meant that while non-binary females had to run as fast as their peers in the women's category, the non-binary males had the luxury of running 30 minutes slower than their fellow males in the men's division. From publicly available information, it's clear that several non-binary males availed themselves of this luxury. Both the Boston and New York City Marathon non-binary category winners, both of them male, have shown their support on Twitter for the expression, excuse my language, TERFs. So they appear to dislike women who assert their boundaries and want single-sex spaces. Why am I not surprised by this? The New York City Marathon non-binary winner has reportedly won over $20,000 for being a 2:45 marathon runner. Of course, this easy money is not on offer to females. This time, 2:45 is not even fast enough to qualify for the London Marathon's championship entry, the group below the elite athletes, which is comprised of very good club athletes. It took me many years of hard work, sacrifice, and dogged determination to reach a level where I could earn money from running. But if you are male, you can just utter the sacred words, I identify as non-binary, and earn good money while dispensing with the hard work that others have to do to earn a living from running. This morning, London became the latest of the World Marathon Majors to adopt a non-binary category. When it announced this innovation last September, under investigation charity Mermaids tweeted its congratulations. The PA news agency reported in the last few days that 118 runners took part in the non-binary were entered to take part in the non-binary category. I haven't been able to find any results so far, but they should be available later. I want to finish by saying that trans and non-binary identifying people must be welcome and included in sport, while preserving the fairness and safety for females and the integrity and fairness of competition. Surely one solution for race directors and event organisers would be to robustly assert and defend the primacy of sex, not gender ideology, as the parameter on which competition categories must be based. And then they can do all they can to welcome and include people of all gender identities and none. Would that really be so hard? Thank you very much for listening.
Okay. What a fabulous speech. Round of applause, please, for now, while the fight back might have started in England, in Turf Island, it's now gone global, and there are athletes speaking up all over the world. Some of them couldn't be here today, so they've kindly sent us in a speech to read on their behalf, to speak a little bit about their actions and the work that they're doing to push back against gender extremism in their purview. Marie McLaughlin, would you like to go up and read a speech? She's going to read a speech by a coach called Linda Blade, who's been fighting back in America.
Yeah, Coach Blade! Hello, let women speak. My name is Linda. No, I didn't accent. My name is Linda Blade, Coach Blade. I am a sport performance coach from Canada. As president of track and field in the province of Alberta, I have spent the past 5 years speaking out publicly against the unfairness of having men in women's sports. I am happy to tell you that at the end of March 2023, our global leaders in world athletics announced that it would no longer be permitted to have men competing against elite women in the sport of athletics. This has been wonderful news, and you can be sure that Lord Seb Coe would never have been able to make this announcement without all of you amazing women from Turf Island. We in sport from around the world will take this opportunity to say thank you, UK women. As the battle for women's sports wages on across the globe, we look to you for our inspiration. We will win because we have no choice but to succeed. And we will win because, as has been shown by you wonderful UK adult human females, we will refuse to lose. Celebrate yourselves today. Thank you ever so much.
Thank you very much for that. Next up, we have Jen Williams from Object.
Hi. It's important to look at the history. It's important to look at the history of these things. I studied ancient Greek, and the misogyny that affects our sport goes right back before the 5th century BC, when only men competed, only men won and got the laurel crown, and nobody cared about the women. They were just shut in at home breeding. Moving things forward to the 19th century, they said that women were too slow to participate in sport, so we took off our corsets and our long skirts and we proved them wrong. Sorry to interrupt, gentlemen. They said that we had a poor aim and couldn't hit a target, so we borrowed a gun and had a go, and in the end they had to make a separate women's category for shooting because the women kept winning every time. It's not a thing where bodily strength makes a lot of difference. They said that we were stupid, so we taught ourselves to read from our brothers' books and got to university, and when we were there, we joined in sport. There are some wonderful sports where physical strength and size are less important. I've had a lot of fun in my life at 5'2", playing badminton with wonderfully fit young men who never realised for quite a long time how sneaky you can be at badminton and how well you can do. So I recommend it to anybody that is not 6 foot tall, male and hugely fit. They also said that we couldn't work with hard materials. I used to work for BT and we tried to recruit some female apprentices. Oh no, they said the girls can't work with hard materials. So we recruited some and they did, and they won Apprentice of the Year. They said that women couldn't work on the railways, and magically, when the war came along, they found that those prohibitions no longer applied, and we did brilliantly. And when I joined the railways, they said, oh, you won't be able to pull off a long signal. Well, I did. Then they said you won't be able to lift a Buckeye coupling. Well, I did. It's amazing how the application of strength can matter more than the size of your body. So now they're telling us to be kind and altruistic. I don't recommend it to women because really we've been taken advantage of more than enough already. And we're talking about sport, but when they say be kind and altruistic, they mean we'd like to borrow your body to have babies for other people. Whoops, I've gone off topic. I better stop there.
Yay! Jan Williams. Who would like to speak next? Have we got any? No. Mel. Mel's going to read out another speech that was sent in through the internet to Venice.
No, not to be tomorrow.
Oh, tomorrow. Sorry. To explain some of the issues that they face with athletics. Yeah.
Keep it on your baggy bit.
Oh!
That's in the windshield.
Cannot compare. Man, he's always greater than woman. He's always woman. She need a man in her life.
Well,
sorry.
that's
Sorry,
yeah, you're in the wrong place for that kind of comment.
I am female runner. This is her speech for you today. She can't be here, so I'm going to read it for you. I am female runner. This speech isn't for you to feel sorry for me. It is for you to gain courage to speak out about the unfairness of males being allowed to self-identify and compete in the women's sports category. I and thousands of females have lost places in races, podium positions, prizes and clubs, records, something we can never get back. I love running. I love running hard. I love places in races, podium positions, prizes and club records. Can you see me or not?
Put your thing down.
No, sorry. Having fair competition is important, and having it taken away from me has been devastating. The first time I had to compete against a Tim was 8 years ago. It got me through some hard times. Having fair competition is important, and having it taken away from me has been devastating. I told myself I was a mean person if I thought this was unfair. I still feel this today. I lost. Then another Tim joined my club. Both these Tims went from average male runners to immediately winning age group prizes in the women's category. They deprive females of not only places in races, but of national medals and even prized England master team selection. No one said anything. It felt like I couldn't speak up. I'd seen the horrendous abuse of those who dared to. I questioned myself. My motivation plummeted. I gave up hope on the start line. I felt alone. I was told that I was losing because I hadn't trained enough. I started to quietly self-exclude from races where the Tims were competing. No one noticed, but this only increased my feelings of unfairness and worry for future athletes. If I hadn't met the amazing Mara Yamuchi, I would have walked away from politics. Not politics, female athletics. More politics, right? With encouragement, I wrote many times to the heads of UK Athletics England and County Athletics, British Masters and event organisers, explaining the impact on me and my worries of putting my daughters and the teenage girls off sports. Did I get sympathy? Did I get action? No. Every single one of them told me it was complex and that inclusion was very important and that the teams were always winning or always beating me, so there wasn't a problem. I was warned about my language. How can we expect to ignore our own eyes and the known 10% of more advantage males have in running? That's the same as giving someone a 2-minute head start in a park run, 5k or more, than 30 minutes in the marathon. Imagine sitting for a half-hour coffee break and still being able to finish at the same time as an equally trained female. How can we women compete against this unfairness? A third Tim started racing against me, a self-declared unsporty person before transitioning. Within a few months of transitioning, they were on the podium in races and breaking club female records. This was making a mockery of all the years of training and sacrifice. All 3 Tims have been awarded Female Athlete of the Year, within an injustice for the amazing females in their club. And then Amelia Strickler spoke up. What an inspiration.
Yeah.
I decided enough of feeling sorry for myself and self-excluding. I wasn't going to let males dictate which races I entered any longer. I wrote many more letters and posted on Twitter about my experiences. When no one listened, I started wearing #SaveWomenSport signs on my vest at every race. I was shaking with fear the first time. Thank goodness Kativ Ross and my teammates were there in support. But I needn't have worried. I get so much support from strangers at every race, from female runners, from dads wanting fairness for their daughters, that I wear my sign with pride. This speech is from @FemaleRunner. And she ends with, don't feel sorry for me. Be brave and speak up for fairness for females. Save women's sport.
Yay! I just go right on there.
So let me just grab that. You're going to move on a little bit.
So I'm also
What was
reading
their
a
website again?
speech
Can't remember that. Anyway, I mentioned their YouTube a little bit earlier on.
a
yeah?
woman who calls herself gymnastics mum. I'm a gymnastics mum. Let me tell you about my
Yeah, for sure.
There's yours.
Hey, man.
So, Stinking Rebels are out. You been down there? I haven't
The
been down
Extinction
there.
Rebellion people?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I was down there yesterday, actually.
Was it fun?
Like, talking to them. They seem to have really decided to embrace violence. Or, they're just on the cusp of it, you know what I mean, right?
Violence?
Like, yeah. So
I thought this was a peaceful event.
Oh, come on, right?
Huh? I didn't know.
The peaceful event is just to convince people. But once they've run out of people to convince, what do you think is going to be the next step? What, they're just going to be like, okay, we convinced all the people, but, we still think the world's going to burn. We're going to, go home. No, come on,
Well, it's the end of the world, don't forget.
Exactly. And the end of the world will justify all kinds of horrible shit.
Did you get the bleep?
Huh?
Did you get the bleep?
Oh, no, I turned mine off.
I turned mine off so I could video. Other people getting the bleep, and then either I was too late out the tube, or I didn't notice it, or they're all foreigners around me. I don't know.
Yeah,
Nothing
no,
happened. It was a big damp squid.
I heard it go off around me.
Oh, you did?
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah,
Was it-
presumably that's the plan. Even if a bunch of people turn it off, if you're in a public space.
Yeah. I can't see what if you put yourself in their shoes, what possible emergency could require a text message?
It's for the war.
Yeah, apart from that, yeah.
Well, what do you mean apart from that? That's the whole thing.
So do you think we are edging towards? Let me get the right light on your face there. Lovely, mate. Do you think we're edging towards war then?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Who with?
Well, with Russia, but I mean, Russia and China, and I guess anyone who joins up with. Violence is the way that competing viewpoints that cannot be reconciled are ultimately decided. And the West has made it very, very clear that they don't want to compromise on their viewpoint. I guess you're calling the axis now, I don't know, the axis of hate or something the West will probably call them, have also made it clear they don't wish to compromise. So,
Is TikTok a weapon of war?
Probably a weapon of propaganda, I would say.
For what though? For dancing booty and cats and crocodiles eating lions, or or being friendly with lions?
Well, I mean, it's a very, very good social programming tool. So I guess you could use it for all kinds of stuff. I've seen all kinds of like weird shit pop up on TikTok,
Is it?
like challenges to trash schools. You know, I mean, you just, you know.
I don't watch enough of it.
Me
Obviously,
neither,
don't
but
watch enough of
It's
it.
a great mass line tool if you think about it. You know what I
Okay,
mean? Right? Like you could
okay.
use it to implant like a mass line for almost anything, really.
Okay.
You know, your only limit is your imagination, I guess, and the limits of the ideology that encompass the people that you're trying to influence. You know?
Okay.
Yeah.
Robert F. Kennedy, Robert J. Kennedy, standing for president. What do you think?
I'm very bullish, although apparently he's very behind the whole climate change
I
thing,
heard that.
so-
I heard people saying that, but I mean, you can't expect a pure, phantom to emerge. It's going to like.
Sure, but the
You know what I
climate
mean?
thing is the most important thing of all.
Well, it
because
is, but
it decides
look,
whether.
they've been banging on about the climate for yonks.
Sure.
About the
right?
lockdown came out of the blue.
Sure. But ultimately, right, what it means is, does the government have the right to use coercive state power to regulate every single tiny part of your life? Everything that consumes energy at all, which is basically everything apart from like breathing, right? In the name of changing the weather.
Yeah.
That is the most central issue.
Okay, but if you look at, if you've had a look at his book, it's a fantastic book. His
It
book.
is a great book.
And the very fact of him standing up there speaking and standing for president, I mean, I don't think he's got a cat's chance in hell, but at the same time, even less probably. But at the same time, him standing up and speaking, it's just a thorn in the side. You know what I mean?
It is going
So-
to be fucking entertaining.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
would love to see.
And he said, did you hear it? Did you listen to his speech? It was really quite good. And he goes,
yeah.
he says, oh, and I've had a dissolute youth up until my 60s, he said. And there's probably more things you could smear me with than votes I'll get. You know what I mean?
I covered a bunch
he
of.
doesn't care. You know what I mean?
I covered a bunch of his stuff on my show, which, by the way, you can watch on Rumble Monday and Thursday nights at 8 p.m. London time. Search for Newsfist.
There we go. News
Check
Fist.
it out.
News
come along.
Fist. There we go. And your Telegram channel is?
My Telegram channel is also Newsfist on
There we
Telegram.
go. There we go.
You know.
All right, I think we're done.
All right, thanks.
All right,
mate.
thanks very much.
See
Eh?
ya.
Are you doing all right? Are you doing all right? Good for you. You just come down a bit, I've got my ladder and stuff like that. I thought you were my cousin, you look just like my cousin.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He was supposed to be coming down and he's messaged me about an hour ago. He was beaten up yesterday, you know that?
Puffed up, like this, ready to pop. On the top, spot, like a cheese. I mean, champion, use my physical touch. I understand.
Oh, he's coming, he's coming. Yeah, he's coming, yeah. The busies, I mean, there's a lot of busies around here. I mean, it's not a bad thing that they're protecting them, but they've got a bit of overkill now. Like, there's a van, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 vans, a couple of cars, loads of cops. I mean, there's no harm in them protecting them at the same time. Why so many? Camera's corner. Right, with a couple of people speaking. Oh, he's kitted out well, isn't he? Look at him. What an outfit. Excuse me, sir. Would you mind telling me, where does your outfit come from? Are you from maybe Karachi?
Yeah, I'm from Karachi.
There you go, I got it right. Wahey, wahey.
Yeah.
They do dress smart in Karachi, don't they?
I like this kind of thing, you know. I love it.
I saw some people from Karachi that had these fantastic blue shiny shoes with a little
yeah.
twirl on
when
them.
I was young.
Is it, yeah?
Only toe. You can see your face.
So why are the Karachians so stylish?
And when I came when I was 18 to Karachi, it was not different from here to there.
Okay.
You know, they were exactly the same town, London, and they were very fashionable.
Yeah.
Actually,
Westernized fashion, you mean, yeah.
educated people. They were
Right.
very educated people in
Yeah.
Karachi, very
Yeah.
educated.
Yeah.
Yeah. They are very good. Yeah.
So when did this style come in then? When did the sort of style
This style
council
came
set in?
about 13 years ago.
Okay.
30 years ago, when I become a Muslim and gone for a Hajj, you know.
Okay.
Then.
Oh, you got to dress up for the occasion.
No. Then people say I have one long one. They say it's suit you. So I start wearing it. Then I start wearing. Extra
It's the
one.
colour coordination
Yeah,
today,
then I
isn't it?
start
The colour coordination.
Yeah. I like heavy colour.
And you got the proper beard there as well, haven't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look, try to.
It's like Karl Marx times 2.
This is it's smelling. Yeah.
What's that, perfume?
Perfume, yeah.
Oh no, I don't need perfume.
Yeah.
Are you knocking that out, are you, perfume?
No. I love you guys.
Okay.
That kind of perfume, you know.
All right.
Yeah. So you okay?
Yeah, not bad. Thanks very much,
Okay,
eh?
sir.
How long have you been coming to Speaker's Corner? I've seen you around a while.
No, this is the third time I come.
Only third time?
Yeah,
Is that right? Well, there you go.
third
There you go.
time, yeah.
What brings you down here? What brings you down here now?
Learned a few things here and there, which I didn't know before.
Oh, like what?
Yeah, Christianity, Jews, Shias and Muslims and all that kind of thing.
Right.
I'm learning everything.
Is that right? Great.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, thanks very much, mate. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
You're just a bit too loud for the girls there. That was all it was. A bit too loud for the girls.
No worries, I was just projecting my voice. We said we were going to have a debate between communism and Christianity.
We did, yeah.
Let's do it.
Let's do it now.
Yeah, let's go, bro.
I'm supposed to speak now, but
You
all right.
can still
20
speak.
minutes worth. Not too long.
Oh,
not too
come
long,
on, bro.
I ain't going to go on for ages.
As long as you can manage.
20 minutes.
Oh, I think that's a bit
A
weak.
starter.
Yeah, let's go over there.
This guy's here all the time. I'm here all the time. We can return to themes.
All right, let's go. Let's
we
go.
don't
let's
need
go.
to. All
Let's
right.
go. We can even use the
All
stand
right,
if you want. Take it in turns
All
to
right,
make
then.
our case.
Oh, I see. That's a possibility.
Yeah. So what should be the question that we debate between Christianity and communism?
That's a good question.
Yeah. So I would
That would be a starting question.
Yeah. Well, I would propose. I propose to you the question that we should debate is.
Would you like to take the camera for me? Oh, Addy, would you like to take the camera for me? I've been press ganged into holding a debate with Bob for 20 minutes about Christianity versus communism or Marxism. Careful. Hold. Let go. That's it. Damn it. There's 38 on there, which is not a lot. I've only got 20 minutes. Sorry. I think we can get started.
Yeah, I was just thinking we could do 2 minutes, so we'll just. Are you wanting to stand up? Shall we do it stood up?
We could do stand up and each take a little bit of a turn.
Go on. You time
And then
me,
take the
I'll
questions.
time you.
Okay.
2 minutes.
Okay, you can start. It's a sort of debate.
So, ladies and
It's been
gentlemen,
pressing me for-
we're going to debate the question, should you follow communism or should you follow Christianity?
Alright.
I am going to make the case, ladies and gentlemen, that you should follow the Christian faith, and if you're a communist, you should abandon communism. My first reason for this is that the diagnosis, the description, the ontological description of humanity. Can you just count me down how many minutes have passed?
4 minutes.
Yeah, right. The ontological description of communism
Tell people what ontological
is ontological is about the nature of the being of the human person, is flawed and incorrect. Communism states that human beings are born a blank sheet of paper, and society writes the code upon your soul that you then go on to live by. So if you're greedy, it's because the society you're born into is greedy. And that if we create a communist state, that a new man will emerge, a Marxist man, a communist man, who will be free from the worst traits of humanity. This is a lie. Karl Marx was wrong. Human beings are, for the most part, a blank sheet of paper. But on that blank sheet of paper is a single line of code that you were born with. From birth, you had it. It is to be selfish. Biologists like Richard Dawkins acknowledge the idea of the selfish gene. And we see in all kinds of human civilizations through all of society, including everywhere where communism has been tried, that selfishness corrupts those societies. Why has communism never been tried, as the good lady states? Why have the communists always failed to establish communism? Because of the selfishness of the people creating the society. Christianity, by comparison, is accurate in its ontological description of humanity. It says that human beings are born selfish, and it uses that truth to guide its politics, so that the point of political affairs is to mitigate the selfishness of man. The reason why capitalism is so successful in our world is precisely because it agrees with the selfishness of man. It gives license to the selfishness of man, and that is why as an economic system it works. Don't take my observation as an endorsement. It isn't. I don't endorse capitalism or laissez-faire economics. However, that is the reason why communism has consistently failed, and it is the reason why capitalism succeeds. Because capitalism acknowledges the selfishness of man and works with it. And thus this is a proof that the Christian teaching about the ontological nature of man is true. But by contrast, the ontological statements of the writings of communists like Karl Marx are in error. And if you're building your politics on error, they will fail, just as we have seen communist states fail across the world. How much time do I have? Sorry.
Thank you very much. That was impressive. Impressive. Even though I studied sociology for my sins once upon a time, I still never quite grasped what ontological is. So do you want to repeat that again for me, Bob? Ontological. How you define that again?
Ontological is a description of human nature.
Of human nature, okay. So the argument that Bob was making is that man is inherently bad. I don't think that's actually what the Bible says, but I'm not a Christian and I haven't really studied the Bible. But as far as I know, that's not what the Bible's arguing. I think the Bible is arguing that man is inherently good, and that the behavior of human beings should be brought into alignment with that endemic goodness, that inherent goodness that God created within man, and that finds its negation in the breach of the regulations and rules and moral norms and cultural behavior instilled by the belief in God, Jesus and Christianity. That's how I understand Christianity. I could be wrong. Now, I'm not here to try and correct your Christianity, but that's just how I've understood it. I didn't realize it was about bad people being bad all the time, sinners, as some of the speakers at Speaker's Corner make out. Now, the argument that Bob made, that man is bad, and that that's why communism or Marxism is inevitably going to fail, I think is incorrect. Marx did not argue that human beings are inherently bad or inherently good. What he argued was that the conditions in which people live are governed by the processes that they need to carry out in order to survive. They have to work and produce things to satisfy the wants of existence. But human beings produce things that then gain. There was a piece in the Bible, I think it's Isaiah 8, it says, they worship that which they made with their fingers. In other words, man makes God and makes gods which they then worship. They produce God. They produce God. Feuerbach, one of Marx's inspirations, argued. They produce God in the spirit of the positive concepts of man. So in other words, God is an image of the most positive imagination and conceptual frameworks of what man should be. Now, Marx argued that you can actually only establish a community and a brotherhood of man, such as that envisaged by the followers of Jesus and the disciples of Jesus. You can only establish such a society based on material plenty. And there are examples in the Bible which illustrate that theoretical principle. For example, when Moses takes his people into the desert and they suffer, then they begin to worship false idols, exactly at a time when their material condition is so poor that they cannot survive. Jesus, in order to impress himself on the people, has to produce from 5 fish 5,000. In other words, the satisfaction of the wants of the people to allow them to create a morally good society is preconditioned on having a certain material foundation. And it's on that theoretical framework of the material foundation for plenty and for collaboration that Marx's theory of socialism and communism came about. He did not believe that you could create communism in any circumstances. He believed there had been a long period of primitive communism that could be restored. Communism could be restored when plenty was established. I didn't get rid of applause.
So, ladies and gentlemen, the second critique as a Christian that I place against communism, on top of the ontological criticism, is the fact that it is based on a false sociology. Marx based his understanding of the process of the emergence of the communist state almost in fatalistic terms. And the reason why he did that is that he was using the Hegelian paradigm by the philosopher Hegel that spoke of the zeitgeist of the time in which society would progress from thesis to antithesis to the synthesis, and that this material process would inevitably lead to the rise of the communist state. That Hegelian thesis of the natural progress of the zeitgeist has been proven false countless times. It is not clearly evidenced in history that the progress of societies is always to go forward. There are countless examples when societies have gone backwards. Let me give you an example. The collapse of the Roman Empire in the 4th century led to a decrease in learning, led to what Enlightenment thinkers termed as the Dark Ages. In other words, the thesis upon which Marx builds his whole paradigm of the Hegelian progress of material economy is not always true and is sometimes false. In other words, if Hegel was wrong, Karl Marx was wrong, and Hegel was wrong. Ladies and gentlemen, the reality is that Marx does make observations that I agree with. Economy does affect your lives. It affects the decisions you make. It affects the decisions that are available to you. But the problem with the Marxist critique of capitalism is that it believes that freedom can come about if the worker has possession of the means of production, that this itself gives freedom. But Christ says no to this. Christ says that freedom is a faculty, ladies and gentlemen, of knowledge. That if you know the truth, it is the truth that shall set you free. In other words, ladies and gentlemen, even if the proletariat were to gain control of the means of production, if they were not in the truth of Christ, they would still be bound to their sin. They would still be bound to their fallenness. They would still be bound to corruption that so permeates the world. The reality is that you have two roads for freedom promised to you. One by Christ, One by Marx. Marx says that it is through the possession of the means of production. Christ says that it is in the knowledge of the truth. These two theses cannot be reconciled. These two theses are quite different, and they cannot both be correct. Therefore, if Christ is right, Marx is wrong. If Marx is right, Christ is wrong. And just to show you, ladies and gentlemen, that I'll get it on my next go.
2-0 to Bob the Builder. 2-0.
I haven't even said anything yet. Can't be two without me saying anything. Oh, my time's going. George Friedrich Wilhelm Hegel was referred to. Hegel was the official Prussian philosopher from 1815 to 1830. In his older years, he was a believer, and in fact, throughout his life, he was a believer in Christianity. What he did was he tried to work out the strange and mysterious ways that God moves the earth. He believed that God would move through human beings through a series of contradictory processes which were observable in the world, would move towards the idea of God being realized on earth. Now, there are people at Speaker's Corner who stand up as Christians and say, well, you must repent because in the afterlife you're going to go through hell. You know, you'll be tortured, murdered, burned, set on fire, so on. There are a lot of people who think that's an appealing concept as to why you should adopt Christianity. Now, Hegel didn't believe that. Hegel believed that God was moving through man as a spirit to make human beings establish a superior type of human life on earth. It was again a reflection of the conflicts between the Catholic Church, which had ruled over Europe in an obscurantist and authoritarian fashion for centuries, between Charlemagne's time or even earlier, up until the 17th century, the French Revolution and the English Revolution. But a little bit earlier than this in Germany, Martin Luther adopted a new form of Christianity. And you have to understand these processes of the development of Christianity, not in terms of a body of ideas, which was the problem with Hegel's concept. He believed it was simply the transformation of ideas, clashing and then advancing human behavior. So ideas make history rather than the real conditions of people. The consequence of that was there was a clash. When Martin Luther went to Rome and discovered that the Catholic Church was based on fraud and lies, pompous people in smart outfits, adorning themselves with ornaments and gold, and acquiring wealth at the expense of the masses, they were corrupt and should be overthrown. And therefore, when he found out that they were issuing indulgences, in other words, you could murder someone and get a piece of paper, a dispensation from God that would excuse you from your actual actions on earth, your material activity on earth. Martin Luther rejected this. And the Anabaptists, who believed that Christianity was no longer something you should worship in a church, it's not to be found in a church. They said that the relationship between man and God, in other words, the relationship between man and their moral being, was about a direct relationship between the individual and God. And that's why they call themselves the Anabaptists, the born again. You were born when you're an adult to affirm your belief in a way of life. Now, these type of ideas were closely related to early communistic principles. For example, Thomas Müntzer, Martin Luther's ally, led a revolutionary struggle against the rulers in Europe in 1525 to establish a communistic community of the people. Many of the communities that established the United States as we know it today emerged from those type of communities. They do have a direct link to communistic principles.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you're enjoying yourself. This is exactly what Speaker's Corner is meant to be about. However, let me correct the history that my esteemed colleague has just given to you. Because, ladies and gentlemen, he has provided with you an ahistorical reading of Christianity. He has tried to suggest that Christ was the first communist and that the first apostles envisioned a communist state, and that what the events of Munster were the establishment of a communistic kind of society. This is simply factually wrong. The reality is that the early Jewish Christian movement was an apocalyptic Jewish movement that believed that their Messiah had inaugurated a new age in which God's kingdom would advance upon earth. And that is exactly what I believe as a Christian. When the events of Munster occurred during the Reformation, it was not to establish anything like a communist society. He's factually wrong in saying that. What was being established in Munster was an apocalyptic theocracy. Does apocalyptic theocracy sound like communism to you? No, of course not. But go and read the writings of the people involved in that revolution. They saw their actions as being inauguration of the end of the age. The age that we live in,
by God, yeah?
the age that we live in is the age of the church. And the mission of the church is to do something far better than the Communist Party, far better than ever envisioned by Marx. And that is to allow, through Christ, in his holy church, the advancement of the kingdom of God on earth. That, through the work of the church, society may be restored, that the human person may be restored, that nature may be restored to that which was envisioned by God in the garden, where man would live in unity with man and with nature and with God in peace and justice. And this is exactly, ladies and gentlemen, what the church is about. And if you're a Christian, if you're a Christian, don't feed the troll with energy. If you're a Christian, ladies and gentlemen, I want to say to you that you have a vision and a mission that is greater than the one laid out by Marx in the Communist Manifesto. The Communist Manifesto is an ideology built on envy and bitterness at the success of some over others. And out of that bitterness and envy is the desire for violence. Christians are concerned every bit as much as communists with justice. And we have pursued justice for 2,000 years. Sometimes we have succeeded, sometimes we have failed. Sometimes we have been let down by those who claim the name Christ but know nothing of his teachings. By contrast, the revolutionaries that killed the saints, Tsar Nicholas and his family, were driven by an ideology of hatred that led to violence, and that is why communism has resulted in the deaths of over 140 million people in 100 years. One of the most bloodiest ideologies in history.
So, the reason why I'm taking up the issues that are specifically raised is because Marxism is about a method of understanding the history of the world based on the material conditions that people live in. And so, for example, the image that Bob presents of Jesus Christ, I don't think is accurate. Jesus Christ, don't forget, lived under a society in which the Jewish people and the Christian people were enslaved. And people who are enslaved generally dislike their enslavement. Not always, but generally dislike their enslavement. And so there are interpretations which I think are correct as to what Jesus was up to, which contradict the type of argument that is being presented and contradict the general view of what Jesus is in the Christian ideology or Christian faith. Jesus, I put to you, was a revolutionary leader of the slaves of Judea, and the reason why he was executed, if you check through the text of the Bible, you'll see many of them have been changed at different times during the course of history. Particularly under the Romans, they changed them. When the Romans adopted Christianity, they removed part of what Jesus was supposed to have said. Because if you ask yourself, Jesus was going around, a few days before he was killed, Jesus was going all around making speeches. Right? And then when, what's his name, the traitor? Judas. When Judas goes to report where Jesus is, that's supposedly what he gets paid for, right? Yes, he gets paid for revealing where Jesus is. But Jesus is going and speaking in public like I am at Speaker's Corner. Everybody knew where Jesus was. He wasn't betraying where Jesus was. On the contrary, what happened at the Last Supper indicates that Jesus was plotting an armed insurrection against Roman rule, against the rule of the slave owners. So what he said at the Last Supper was, I quote you, you can tell me the exact quotation, but you know what I mean. He says, if you have a mantle, a coat, sell it and get a sword. If you have some other thing, sell it and get a shield. And then he leads his forces up onto a hill or something like that. They meet the Romans, and I think it's Simon, if I'm right, pulls out his sword and smites off the ear of a Roman soldier. In other words, a direct clash organized by Jesus to organize an insurrection against the oppression of the oppressed, against the slave people. But under the Roman rule, when Romans adopted the belief of Christianity, after all, before that they used to feed them to the lions, right, in circuses. When they adopted Christianity, they needed to make it a passive and reformist religion. And so they changed the wording, they changed the emphasis, and they made the story into something where Jesus was some kind of pacifist, where he says, do not hurt the other person, do not harm the other person. 2 or 3 words after he's told people to get a sword and overthrow Roman rule. In other words, Jesus was, in my interpretation, a revolutionary fighter for the freedom of the people against the slave ownership of Roman rule. And is a model in that sense for revolutionary struggle right since that time, like the Spartacus rebellion as well, a slave rebellion against the rule of the Greek slave owners.
So, ladies and gentlemen, you've all heard the statement, Christ is a revolutionary. He wanted to lead a revolution against the Romans. And he quoted a passage from Luke. Let me actually read to you that passage in Luke. And he said to them, when I sent you out without money belt and bag and sandals, you did not lack for anything, did you? They said, no, nothing. And he said to them, but now whoever has a money belt is to take it along, likewise also a bag, and whoever has no sword is to sell his coat and buy one. For I tell you, this which is written must be fulfilled of me. And he was numbered with the transgressors, for that which refers to me has to be fulfilled. In other words, Christ is saying, get swords so that the prophecies about me can be fulfilled. And then what do the apostles say? They said, look, Lord, here are 2 swords. Is it conceivable to any of you that with 2 swords Jesus planned to overthrow the Roman Empire?
Maybe there were more.
That's what he was trying to suggest, and yet that's what the text shows. It is utter nonsense to the facts. I know he's triggered, and that's why he's interrupting. Ladies and gentlemen, furthermore, this shows that Christ was not a pacifist. Christ went into the temple in John chapter 2, and he cleansed the temple having made a whip of scourges, and he used that whip on man and beast. So Christ was not a pacifist. Christians are not pacifists, but no, they are not communist revolutionaries. I don't blame the communists for trying to claim Jesus. Jesus is the greatest man in history, whose teachings have built civilizations, transformed civilizations, have been the bedrock of societies. It overthrew the Roman Empire. They overthrew the barbarian kingdoms. It resisted the rise of Islam. It survived the birth of the nationalistic governments of the 1700s. It survived the communist states. Why? Because the church was founded by Jesus Christ, and it is only in the church that we can find redemption. And that redemption is transformative of this world, but it is about what happens in the next. The danger of communism, the reason why its ledger is full of the blood of innocent people, is because it has no belief in the next world. The highest authority is the state, and all resources, including all people, should be used for the cause of the ideology. In other words, you are all the means to an end, not an end in yourself. And that is why the ledger of communism is full of blood. But Christianity teaches that every human being is made in the image of God, and therefore is not a means to an end, but must always be treated as an end in themselves. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is another reason why you should abandon communism and follow the way of Christ, follow the teachings of Christ. How am I doing for time? I'll stop there, I'll give it to you.
Thank you very much.
Very good, very good.
So, as far as I understand it, there's no real evidence that Jesus ever existed. So when we're talking about Jesus Christ as a revolutionary, we're talking about what the specific historical circumstances that led to the emergence of the character, of the belief of this individual as a salvational force. Can someone tell that guy to turn the music off? Because it's not on. As a salvational force to struggle against the existing rule by the slave owners. Come in a wee bit, I can't. So that's one aspect. There is no evidence for the existence of Jesus Christ. Second, but as the character, as a revolutionary, there's evidence. Now, come in a wee bit, come in a wee bit. Now, the argument about the dictatorial rule of communism and so on, well, many regimes that have been established in the name of communism have been dictatorial. And there's a reason for that. It's the same reason why Christianity was never able to fulfill its conceptions, its positive conceptions about how human beings should live collectively and share out the wealth and so on. The reason why that is because the material conditions, if your economy is backward, so let's say our society produces 30 loaves of bread and there's 20 mouths to feed. What is going to happen? It means unless we produce 30 loaves of bread, some people are going to grab the loaves of bread that they require more than other people, and other people will go without. If you produce more, let's say 40 loaves of bread, and there's 30 mouths to feed, and each loaf of bread is an analogy for the necessaries of life, then some people will accumulate that surplus over and above what is produced, because there's not enough for everyone to have an extra loaf of bread, but there is enough for 10 people or less to acquire the surplus produced. How much? 2 minutes. So if you have some people acquiring that wealth, you have the foundation of class society. And it is class society, the subdivision of human society, into those who own the means to produce the wealth, and therefore that determine the direction a society moves in, that determines how society is organized, and, by the way, what ideas rule in society. Hegel, the Christian, believed that the ideas were a function of the development of the evolution of ideas historically over time. It took place in the brain of man, not in the conditions in which human beings lived. Marx amended Hegel's beliefs by putting them on a material foundation and arguing only when you're able to produce an abundance of wealth would you be able to establish a society based on egalitarian principles where the community is able to collectively develop society democratically without force and, yes, without a state. If you read the Communist Manifesto, you'll know he doesn't worship the state. On the contrary, Marx argued that the state is a product of the backwardness of material development. When you reach a higher level of development, you would be able to replace the state with the democratic, moral and cultural will of the people. Rather than forces of repression, people would use their own culture to regulate human interactions. In fact, at Speaker's Corner, despite my disagreements with Bob, his disagreements with the Muslims and so on, it is very rare for us to fight each other at Speaker's Corner. That is because the culture is developed enough and the material conditions are developed enough for us not to fight each other over every single issue.
So, ladies and gentlemen, you all heard him claim that there's no evidence that Jesus Christ ever existed. Put your hand up if you heard him say that.
You did.
You did hear him say that. However, he doesn't know the history. I'm just going to read from Tacitus.
What time was that? What date?
Nero was right. Tacitus was writing in the 1st century. Nero fastened the guilt on a class hated by their abominations called Christians by the populace.
30.
Now notice the brother is triggered and he's shouting at me, wasting my time. Called Christians by the populace. Christus, from whom the name had its origin, suffered the extreme penalty during the reign of Tiberius at the hands of Pontius Pilate. Let me give you another example from Pliny the Younger. Pliny the Younger was writing around 112 AD. They were in the habit of meeting on a certain fixed day before it was light, when they sang in alternate verses a hymn to Christ. Let me read from you evidence from Josephus Flavius, someone from the 1st century, who wrote, about this time there lived Jesus, a wise man indeed. One ought to call him a man, for he wrote surprising feats. He was Christ. He was the Christ. When Pilate condemned him to be crucified, those who had come to love him did not give up their affections for him. On the 3rd day he appeared, restored life, and the tribe of the Christians has not disappeared. So we have countless 1st century evidence that Jesus Christ existed. Dr. Bart Ehrman, who is a critic of the Christian faith, has made countless statements affirming his belief in the reality of Jesus as a person. Now, ladies and gentlemen, without the need for revolutions, we Christians hold out for you the society that the communist wants. Read Acts chapter 4 from verse 32 onwards. And the congregation of those who believed were of one heart and soul, and not one of them claimed anything belonging to him was his own, but all things were in common property to them. And with great power the apostles were giving testimony to the resurrection of the Lord Jesus, and abundant grace was upon them all. For there was not a needy person amongst them, for all who were owners of land or houses would sell them and bring the proceeds of the sales and lay them at the apostles' feet, and they would be distributed each according to the need. In other words, ladies and gentlemen, thousands of years before Karl Marx ever gave his Communist Manifesto, Christ founded a community on theocratic terms that establishes the things that the communists strive for.
Exactly.
An example of this would be the Bruderhof today, who I'll talk about more next.
Well, thanks for confirming what I was arguing earlier on. I was arguing earlier on, if you go through the video, you'll be able to see that. I argued earlier on that early Christian communities and Jesus himself advocated some kind of communism, and you just confirmed that. Because what Karl Marx says in the Communist Manifesto is a society would be established where from each according to their ability, in other words, you work according to your skills and your capability.
Marx believed in God.
He did originally believe in God, yes. He was a Christian. His father was a Lutheran, and he was a Christian up until about his university days.
As a communist?
He wasn't then a communist. He became a communist afterwards. But as you're saying, you said the wealth would be distributed according to need. And that's inscribed in the Communist Manifesto. The issue is this. Are you able to establish a collectivist community that shares out the wealth across the entire world in a society where the material development of production, where the production of wealth is insufficient to satisfy the collective needs of the people? If there is not sufficient wealth produced because the tools, the technology and the division of labour is not sufficiently developed, even though the spirit of man will inevitably tend towards a collectivist Garden of Eden, as you call it, the reason we talk about this Garden of Eden and the reason it exists in the Christian faith is because the majority of human history, from our emergence as apes, from the jungles of the Congo and Central Africa, when we emerged as apes from the jungles and entered onto the plains, some kind of ecological change probably precipitated this. And our ancestors adopted upright posture and were able to look around and check for wild beasts and wild animals. We began to have the unique ability to use the counterposed finger and thumb to manipulate nature and make tools, and yes, make idols to explain the occurrences that appear around us. The rising of the sun, which of course doesn't rise, although the church said it rises and the earth is the centre of the universe. Galileo and earlier Copernicus proved that this was not the case. Instead of this, the earth moves around the sun. And in Galileo Galilei from Bertolt Brecht, he has the peasants in Palermo dancing on the street and singing. The sun doesn't revolve round the earth. The world doesn't revolve around the princes. In other words, revolutionary conclusions are developed by the scientific and material development that man produces by their control over their hands and their brains. But man is alienated from their basic species essence, from the nature of what human beings are. Human beings are social and collectivist animals, but they are separated from their collectivism precisely by the emergence of a class of people and classes of societies where some people own the wealth produced by the hands and brains of others. And up until today, from the time of the emergence of agricultural society, about 25,000 years BC, human beings have lived under either slavery, feudalism, Asiatic despotism or capitalism, in which a few people own the wealth and the means to produce the wealth. And that can be overthrown, is the argument of Marx.
Exactly that.
So, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to move in, if you can't hear my voice, move in. Because I'm not going to project my voice. You're not going to keep projecting my voice. The fact of the matter is, ladies and gentlemen, the kind of society that the communists are willing to kill for and die for is the kind of society that Christians have produced. Go and look up the Bruderhof. Go and look them up now. There's a village in England owned not by communists, not created by communists, but created by Christians, in which no one receives a wage, but no one is poor, homeless, or in want. And what is it that underpins that essential village, that utopia that the communists want? Is it the idea of the struggle of the proletariat against the upper echelons of society? No. It is theocracy. It is the idea that in the heart of every one of those believers, those Christians, that Christ is King. And it is because they acknowledge Christ as King that they have been able to establish the thing that the communists want. By contrast, everywhere that the communists have stuck their dagger into society and drawn blood, that experiment has failed because the elites are corrupted by the thing that the communists refuse to accept is there. Sin. The sin of the human heart. The selfishness of the human person. It says in Romans 23, I'll just quote it to you. Romans 23, for all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. Sin is to fall short of what God expects of us. The word sin means to miss the mark. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what we see in our society again and again and again. That man has a telos, he has a direction, a way to live that his soul points to. A life of meaning, a life built on truth, and a life filled with virtue. But communism provides none of these things. Communism is that the ideology is God and all human persons are to be sacrificed to the altar of the ideology, and that the material world is God and that we should bow and worship the material world. The moment man worships the creation, he loses himself. Yes, we have been separated from the essence of our being. But that separation is not separation from the means of production. That separation is from God, our Creator. And only when we find ourselves in relationship with God, our Creator, will our values and virtues be so ordered that our lives will be built on truth. Communism has failed. The church is still here. Every communist state has failed, but the church is still here, transforming lives, transforming communities, making man and nature new. Why? Why? Because of the work of God in our lives. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the answer that our society needs, not the writings of Marx.
Where's Jesus now? Yes, man.
Yeah. All right.
I challenge you, Jesus, to a duel. Tell him.
Okay, so just a little contradiction to point out. Originally, Bob said that Hegel's ideas don't work because they're part of a trajectory. They believe in some trajectory of direction. A teleology, it's called, which you referred to just now as endemic to your own belief system. So just a little contradiction. And then there's the question about Christianity has done good and communism's done bad. Now, there are many bad things that have been done in the name of communism. I'm not going to dispute that. Probably not as many as he thinks have been done, but many bad things have been done in the name of communism. As many bad things have been done in the name of Christianity and still are done in the name of Christianity. The war in Ukraine is fought in the name of Christianity. The Russians claim to be defending God. The Ukrainians claim to be defending God. The Americans claim to be arming the Ukrainians in defense of the God-driven imperative of their belief system. The British government bombed Iraq, Afghanistan and Libya in the name of God. The Queen of England claims to be, the King of England, behind the times, terribly sorry. But if you look on your coin, it says Elizabeth II, DG, REG, FD. What does it mean? It means the defender of God on earth. That's what it says on every coin. That's the stamp of authority that justifies the acceptance of this coinage as the wealth of the British nation, once the proudest and wealthiest in the world. So all the conquests carried out in the name of Britain were carried out in the name of serving God. So the idea that Christianity is devoid of blood on its hands as an ideology is false. Having said that, I would never dream of blaming Bob or his belief system for those events. Instead of this, I argue that the ideas in which things are fought actually should not be understood through the ideas, but through the material conditions in which people live and which people fight and struggle between different groups in society about who has what, how it's organised, how it's distributed, and how we live. And therefore, what I'm doing is trying to explain how material development and material interactions between real human beings under specific economic and historical circumstances give rise to specific struggles in those societies. The struggles that happen today are different from those of the 13th century, although the language may be the same. When Britain went to war against Africa or against African states, they claimed to be fighting for Christianity. They claimed to be fighting for freedom. They claimed to be defending democracy. But actually, they were representing the national capitalist interests of Britain to plunder Africa, to turn the people into slaves, all in the name of God. Freedom is not freedom because the word freedom means something inherently ahistorical. It is specific to the conditions in which the word is used. And therefore, Christianity, and Bob has been indicating this, in contradiction to what I was arguing earlier on, or what he argued earlier on, sorry, and in correspondence with what I argued, that basically his aim is to have communistic communities. But I argue those communities you discussed have to have a certain material foundation for them to survive. If you're saying people can live without take what they need, they'll only be able to do that if there's enough for them to get what they need. So one more each.
One more round?
Yeah, one more each.
Okay, sir.
We're doing one more round.
Summation.
Oh, so now the summation is...
No, one round and summation. No?
Yeah.
No, this
is the summation. Have you had your summation?
You can come back. No.
Okay.
You started, didn't you? Yeah.
Right. So, ladies and gentlemen, my final comments, my summation.
All right.
And for those of you that came late, you can find the entire debate on Soco Films. SOCO Films.
And subject
Go
access.
and look at it. Ladies and gentlemen, I have demonstrated to you that there are great problems with communism and that Christ answers all of those problems.
Correct.
I want to show to you that the reason why our world is in difficulty is not purely because of material conditions. That's the communist thesis. It is because of the brokenness of our own hearts, and it is because this world is subject to principalities and authorities that are not material, they are spiritual, and you can only be free from them when you have knowledge of the truth which is found in Christ. I read from Colossians 1:16.
Read it.
For by him all things were created in heaven and earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities. All things were created and exist through him and for him. It is only when we find our place in Christ that we find the balance that we need to live our lives in truth and in virtue. If the communist theory is right, then there is no God. If there is no God, then there is no telos, there is no end goal, there is no right and wrong, there is no virtue. The very idea that the communist claims are correct assumes that there is such a thing as truth. And truth does not exist in a world where there is no God. It is, as Richard Dawkins describes, a meaningless universe, indifferent to our existence, cold-hearted, by which we appear by purely random chance. The fact of the matter is, communism contains within it a fundamental contradiction. It hangs upon the scaffold of a theistic worldview whilst denying its own foundations. The reality is, such an inconsistent worldview cannot guide us. But Christ, who said, I am the way, the truth and the life, and no one goes to the Father but through me. He is the gate by which we can enter into truth. And by knowing that truth, so order our lives with the right values and to fill our lives with the right virtues that pursue justice, that pursue justice for the poor and the oppressed, which was the refrain of all the prophets of old. And did they do this, as my friend tries to suggest, because they were early communists? No, not at all. They did this because the Spirit of God revealed to them that the ways of God ought to have, that righteousness should flow like a river, that every man should find his dignity, and that dignity is not provided to him simply by his material possessions, but by the fact that he is created by God, that he knows God, and that in that knowing of God he should truly know himself and truly know his neighbour, loving his neighbour as himself.
Thank you very much.
Go, Hicks!
Okay, so we have, I think, during the course of this discussion, revealed a number of the fundamental differences between Marxist theory and religious theory, particularly the Christian theory that Bob here advocates. And so I'm grateful. Bob's asked me many times to do this discussion, and I'm grateful that we've had the chance to do this. I think it is a better discussion than that discussion that was famous on the internet, the Jordan Peterson Slavoj Žižek discussion, where neither of them knew what they were talking about. At least Bob seems to know what he's talking about in relation to Christianity. I'm not saying Jordan Peterson doesn't, but Jordan Peterson knew nothing about what he was talking about in relation to communism. Slavoj Žižek didn't seem to know anything about anything he was talking about, as is his modus operandi. So, but he is a funny guy, that's perfectly true. You get the impression he takes a bit of coke when he's constantly playing with his nose like that. But in any case, I'm not to condemn that. So, what is the crux of the issue that we're discussing here? As far as I can see, it seems to be a belief within Marxism that the way in which human beings make wealth, the way in which we intercommunicate, has changed over history and is altered based on how the surplus that is produced in society is organized and what technologies are used to produce wealth. That is not about material possessions and individual wealth per se. It's about a way of organizing human life. And there's no doubt that human life today is fundamentally different to human life in Judea 100 years AD. By the way, all the people you cited for references for the existence of Jesus died or wrote. The earliest was 30 years after Jesus was supposed to have died. Now, I know a lot of people who can barely remember the dictatorial regime established last year, the year before, and the year before that. So if that's the case, how do people think back over what happened 30 years ago? And then write those things down in something that you take to be a holy text. But those holy texts were amended by a committee of Romans about 200 years AD. So the idea that we have the exact wording of what happened at that time is a farcical nonsense. Nobody can subscribe to that seriously. So we have to ask ourselves, what are these messages that exist in history and documents? What do we find out from archaeology, from the history of religion, from anthropology, from the history of society? We discover the way in which human beings produce, the way in which ideas develop, are connected together. And science is the discovery, real science, the discovery, the encroachment, not to absolute truth, the approximation of truth. We investigate, we analyse, we try to refute, we discover what is and isn't working. And we accept that even when we make such a hypothesis and declare it to be true, like 1 and 1 is 2, even such fundamental axioms of our thought are not actually correct. One is based on a thumb, one is based on a thumb, and numerical system is based on our fingers. Why do we count in tens? Because we got 10 fingers and thumbs. And therefore we count like this. But this thumb is not the same as that thumb. No human being is the same as another human being. And no human being is the same as they were at the second they said they're a human being. Heiko is Heiko, and he's not Heiko. Because he changes all the time. As everybody changes. Everything is in a constant process of flux and transformation. And in that transformation, we have advanced towards new and superior types of society. Thank you very much. How about we do questions? Okay.
So, ladies and gentlemen,
let's make it 5 minutes. Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, each one of us now are going to take a question from one of you. So I'm now going to take one question, and when I've answered that, Heiko's going to come up and take a question. So have you got any questions, ladies and gentlemen, on what I've said?
You said communist countries have failed. But you got China, you got Vietnam. How do you explain them and their communist countries?
So, ladies and gentlemen,
what was the question from Sila?
Part of my thesis as to why you should follow Christianity and not communism is because communism failed. And the brother has offered up China as a successful state. Do you honestly believe that China is a successful state?
China and Vietnam.
China, when properly understood, is a national socialist ideology. It is, in other words, a Nazi state, not a communist state. It favours the Chinese ethnically over all other peoples, and it even persecutes other ethnic minorities inside the boundaries of China. China is a state that economically has abandoned communism and embraced capitalism. It's more of a capitalist society than a communist society. It is an authoritarian capitalist system. Therefore, it is an example of the failure of communism. And very quickly, let's be clear. What I define as failure, defining as failure as a Christian, is when you don't live your life in accordance with the truth and you don't fill your life with virtue. And China has no concern for either, because the Communist Party doesn't believe that either exists.
Yeah, but you have 800 people coming out of poverty. How do you explain that?
Let me take a question.
I'll reply to
Okay, and then you take a question and I'll
Okay, hey, go on and reply and take questions.
We want to find ways.
You take a question and you reply to mine, take a question.
The same question. I think there's a question addressed to both of us, actually, isn't
it?
Yeah. So, is China communist? It is and it is not. The same as I pointed out earlier on. There are elements of China that are communistic. You mentioned things like sharing out wealth. Well, public sector economy in China is the biggest or the dominant sector of the economy. So they provide housing, some healthcare, they provide provision in the urban areas for people at a level that is far higher than a comparative country, for example, India. In India, or a comparative continent, Africa, where the living conditions are far worse than the living conditions of the masses in China. China doesn't maintain, or Communist Party isn't in power in China because they ruthlessly suppress people, or certainly not exclusively because of that. It's in power because it has consistently, over decades, raised the living standards, the opportunities, the hopes and the dreams of the mass of the people of China. No regime can survive. That's the point. You could have a Christian regime in China. In fact, you did have leaders in China who claimed to be Christian. You even had a Christian revolution in China, in the Taiping Rebellion, in which 50 million people died, by the way. 50 million people. But he wasn't really a Christian. So the question is China communistic? There are elements of communism and there are elements of capitalism. The elements of capitalism are repression, exploitation, child labour and so on. And the clash in China is between these forces. I believe that Marx was correct, that the working class are the agents of revolutionary change. And that would be valid for the working class of China as well. I believe the working class of China, their aspirations, their demands are what shape the trajectory of Chinese society. And by the way, I can prove this in relation to this. For 2.5 years, we protested in Hyde Park and throughout the Western world against the, against the lockdowns. But I'll finish in 1 second. Against the lockdowns. But in China, when the protests broke out in November last year, it took 3 weeks for all the lockdown measures to be removed after a few relatively small protests. In other words, the government in China, like it or not, is compelled to respond rapidly to the demands of the masses when they emerge.
Who's going to take a question now?
Question for Heiko. Any questions?
And then we'll finish it. And then we'll finish it.
So, Haiku. Any questions for Haiku?
Question if you want. No questions.
Any questions?
Tel Aviv.
Right,
no, that's fine. You can make your final pitch, and then we'll finish. Yeah. Okay. You make your final pitch, and then we finish. Is that all right? Yeah.
All right.
You get the last word, and then along comes our Christian speaker over here. The hero of
So,
God.
ladies and gentlemen, you all heard the high praise of Haiku for one of the most oppressive, destructive, and violent regimes in the world today. Let me tell you about what is happening to Christians in China. This communist society is trying, as we speak, to stamp out the church. It has said to Christians that they cannot display their crosses in public. It has said to them that they cannot gather in their own societies that are not governed by a state church. Something that we Christians reject as a point of principle, as a matter of doctrine, that we should give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar and to God what belongs to God. And in reply to this defiance of the church, Christians are being arrested. Christians are being used to harvest organs inside the prison system. Christians are being enslaved in concentration camps inside of China. This communist regime is an enemy of the church, and every Christian should work for its destruction, and every Christian should work against it and against its supporters, including the lovely Haiku here. Ladies and gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, we Christians will not ever accept an authority above God. The communists say that the state and the party is the highest authority. That is a worldly idol that is worshipped by men, because since the 1700s, men have worshipped their own creations in the nation state, in their political ideologies, their institutions, like socialists worship the NHS, and like right-wing people worship the British Army. Christians reject all idolatry. We worship only God, and that is why Christians are being persecuted in China. So when you hear the high praises of China, just remember at the end of those high praises are Christians starving and dying in prisons, separated from those that they love, only because they claim Christ as their Lord, and because that is an offence in a communist state. And everywhere where communism has been tried, the church has been persecuted. Oppose communism if you are a soldier of Christ. I just want to end by saying thank you, Haiku. That was really lovely. God bless you.
We love you, Haiku.
You take. I'd like to give you a gift.
We love you, Haiku. He's going to give me a Bible.
I'm sure you've got a Bible. I'm sure you've got a Bible. I have. You know where I got a Bible from? When I was arrested, they gave me one at the police station.
Really?
Seriously, the only book they had apart from Thomas Clancy or whatever his name is, you know. So I thought, okay, I'll take the Bible. I was to get a bit of culture.
I'd like to give you a gift then.
Go on then, quick. Roses.
Yeah, we got more to come.
Yeah. God, Piers.
There you go. You're going to do something with
You
that.
got a proper booklet. I'll sell it on eBay. Thanks very much.
If there are any questions, I'll be over there.
Thanks very much, Bob. Pleasure.
All right. Well, good evening. Good afternoon. Fantastic to hear that speech. Now, some people are wondering, where's the posters? The posters are down at the pen, and we want people to go there later to actually have a debate. And my t-shirt, well, I have my own pronoun. So this is a self-appreciation t-shirt. There's a story behind it which I won't go into, but anyway, I'm wearing this and Shani washed the other one. An important thing to know before I carry on, and I was self-identifying as a Christian yesterday. If you don't want to listen, go and speak somewhere else, please. I was self-identifying as a Christian yesterday, but before we do that, here we have a collection box.
The Christianity bit. Let's tell us about that.
Because my car needs to be retrieved from it's going to be auctioned and we can buy it back, basically. But we need money. We're unsure of how much it's going to be, but give generously and the extra will go onto campaigning, etc.
Tell us why you were chucked out the church.
Right, yesterday morning in the church of St. John in Waterloo, I went in and with a group and said, because they had an XR rally there to prepare for a march that was going to go to Parliament, a pilgrimage for the planet or something. So I went in and said, Matthew 21 verses 12 and 13, Jesus cast out of the temple the moneylenders and traders and said, my house shall be called the house of prayer, but ye have made it into a den of thieves. And then I said, and you people have done that now to this church, and you should get out of this temple. You are doing the devil's work. Because you, Just Stop Oil, XR, received money from the Getty Foundation, a big oil operation, and George Soros. They're paying you to campaign to effectively raise oil prices, the consequence of which is they double their profits on oil around the world and lose a small percentage to alternative measures. And you are a disgrace and you should leave. And I said that you are doing the work of the devil.
What do you mean by that?
The work of the devil is that, well, it means they're doing evil and telling lies. And I pointed out that in 20,000 years of data in detail, that carbon dioxide levels follow changes in temperature. And all of these new measures, everything under the Great Reset, is backed up by the climate lie.
How did it go down with them?
Well, they listened in stunned silence until they worked out something to do, and they started playing Amazing Grace.
Do you know, I remember we discussed that once. The song Amazing Grace was repentance by a slave trader.
It was.
So probably not the ideal song for them to sing, is it?
Indeed, I think they were caught off their foot. They didn't expect this at all. I said, look guys, we should be praying, we are here praying for more carbon dioxide, which is the gas of life, which is God's gift to humanity and the world, with photosynthesis, which makes plants grow and makes your life possible. You people are the work of the devil. What you're doing is the work of the devil. I've repeated that a few times, and the priest tried to thrust me out, and I said, I'm not going till I finish. They said, have you finished that? And then I added a few things, and basically went out.
and pointed out the World Economic Forum must be destroyed.
It was a star intervention, I must say that.
Thank you.
Round of applause for that star intervention of the church. Made the news, everything. Unusual.
The Daily Mail even reported it. But they left out the first bit, the actual quote from the Bible. They left out the actual quote from the Bible and had me ranting, which I did. I admit it was a rant. But look, what to do next? You see, I said to the priest as he's ushered me out of the door, because he got to the reception area, we had a sort of conversation. I said, look, you should debate this. He said, we always discuss things in the church. I said, oh, good. Now look, those churches now, they do use them as businesses. The day before we went to suss it out, there was a big exhibition in there of selling something, I don't know, furniture or something. It was a shop, a fucking fashion show. So they are doing what Jesus said they should not do. You know, and in one of the other, Luke or Mark, I don't know, Jesus has reported he went at these traders with a scourge and whipped them out. So, you know, it shouldn't be allowed. And I think we should do what Luther did. We should nail some new principles to the door of that church and say, you know, we have no traders in here. We have the truth here. We rely on evidence-based science. And, you know, just start a debate. There is a debate already in the church. We know some Christians are really pissed off with how they've been taken over by the evil, and it is evil, of the XR people. You notice on the march yesterday, they're all dressed in red at the start. Really very weird satanic stuff. It is. It's satanic things going on, in their terms, whatever you believe or not. But we should force a debate on this, and I think we can. And I will nail some principles to the door of that church and force a discussion. We can be the new Luther movement. You could be a new Lutherian. Well, we remember ourselves.
Haircuts like that.
Yeah, have haircuts like that.
Started.
Okay, well, that's the main thing I wanted to say today. Just that around the country, ultra-low emission zone is going really well. But we need more action. We've got fake oppositionists in there, and as I said in the speech later, that we have the Together movement, which is like a bastard child of Sunak, the Revolutionary Communist Party, and Nigel Farage. And you know, can you think of anything produced by them more horrible than that you have? I mean, let's be clear, there will be fake opposition, there will be infiltration, and we have to guard against these things. And the way forward always is build clear, united fronts, which can unite us in an actual way forward and not give an inch to the other side. And I pointed out at the rally later outside the Ministry of Defence yesterday that my brother lost his way through popular frontism. He knew he was talking nonsense when he went along with the climate con. I warned him, if you go along with this, you will become a prisoner. And now he has become a prisoner of their raft of ideology, their raft of lies. He supports the vax. He supports international vax. And you know, he doesn't do anything about ultra-low emission zone. He believes in the climate lie, which means the end of air travel, the end of everything. It means 15-minute cities. We oppose all these things. He's become a prisoner. And that's what happens if you adopt anything of the enemy program. You could ignore some of the enemy program, yes, but our principles have to be principles for the working class. They have to be that. Only then can we win. Okay, so that is what I wanted to say about the way forward. Think carefully. You could go round, sir.
Try going round.
You could go round.
Try going round, mate. Try going round. Try going round, mate.
This is where we're
Try
speaking.
going round. This is Speaker's Corner.
Piss off.
Long before you turn up your bike, mate. Go round. Go round us. Because this is Speaker's Corner about democracy and free speech, not for you to cycle your bike into us. We are here. You can see we're here, right? So in other words, we're animals to be run over by you because you think you got it right. Go round. Go round. Not to go through us, no. Fuck off. You're behaving like an idiot. Don't have to follow your boy. He's behaved like an idiot. You don't have to copy that. So go fuck off then. You can wait there as long as you like, yeah, but don't charge through us.
All right.
Don't cycle through us, that's all.
Okay, so
what's the matter with these people?
To build the united movement, we have to stick to, I repeat, principles of a united front and not exceed anything to the other side. And it is election times coming up out of London, and there we'll be putting forward the united front. Key principles which we expect any candidate to support. It's not a new party, it's a united front of numbers of parties and individuals. But key principles, we've discussed them in some places already, they'll be released shortly. But number one, or it could be number two, I don't know, but number one, men are men, women are women. And you should applaud that, please. And immediately, all of the political parties in Parliament, the leaderships are out, because they don't believe that anymore. And I was physically attacked yesterday, by the way, in a pub in the Gents by a person purporting to be a woman. I won't go into the details, but it was very nasty. I was punched in the face and got a bleeding nose. I don't know what it was about, but it's very, very strange and creepy. But, you know, these things are happening now because of this trans nonsense. Another principle will be roads are for travelling up, not for flower beds. Another principle, accountability in all political things. So you've got to have the right for re-election. If some member of parliament or councillor reneges on what they said, then a certain percentage of the population should have a petition to demand a re-election now. Okay. Numbers of things like that, that will be an important way forward. And I think I'd better end there, but please get in touch and give money. We need money to get the car back. The ULEZ anti-ULEZ car. There's money in there, there's £20 in there. Fantastic. Anybody got more? Take leaflets. Nicholas is a fantastic little shit.
Resist what?
Sorry, my thumb hurt.
Resist what?
Mad woman. I shouldn't have clapped.
Resist what?
What?
Resist.
Yes, what we do. Sorry, it's not on there because I'm my own pronoun today. But
oh no, he's got a clean jumper.
Yeah, it says I'm number one fan of myself.
Hey!
Well, it's my own pronoun, why not? So let's finish. Is it in one or three? It's in one, isn't it? Or is it three today? One. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Resist!
Defy! Do not comply! Resist! Defy! Do not comply! I was going to say one more.
Resist! Defy! Do not comply! Thank you.
I want to say one more thing quickly.
He can't count, you see. We said one and he got to 2.
One more thing I want to say.
Okay, but we're going down to the pen now. Westminster Tube, argue with the XR mad people.
I've got one more thing to say, actually, just for the people who are here who don't know or may not have followed it. One fantastic thing that happened this week was Robert Kennedy Jr. announcing his candidacy for President of the United States, first for the Democratic nomination. Now, I don't think he's got a cat's chance in hell, and we know from Bernie Sanders that he also was blocked by the, what they call it, the caucus.
He was fake from the start.
It doesn't matter, the question is, he was going to be blocked anyway. But he spoke brilliantly, given the fact he's got this voice impediment. The central issue is not about whether he's a perfect individual, whether he understand people are saying, oh, he supports climate bullshit and all the rest of it. The key thing is, here is a man who is completely cancelled by the mainstream, by YouTube and every other mechanism that they could use because of his views about Big Pharma, about the lockdowns and about the vaccinations. And he published a fantastic book called The Real Anthony Fauci, which I recommend everybody gets a copy of. And I believe that his candidacy will transform the discussion in the United States simply because he's standing. Not because of any specific thing that he'll say, although they'll be important, but his standing alone will mean many people will start to investigate and understand what happened to the world over the last couple of years. So in that respect, I'm fully supporting Kennedy 24 for standing for the Democratic Party. That will signal a transformation in the understanding in America and around the world of all the nightmare and the dystopian tyranny that was established on the world over the last couple of years. So all my support to him in that candidacy.
Well, with Hart goes back in, he's going to win.
Thanks very much, everybody.
Oh, is Emily still here? Emily, have you gone? No, I'll ring her up, don't matter. But she wants, yeah, she wants...
That's it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much, and thank you to Addy here
Shall we have a song?
for doing this long
Can we have a quick song?
video. We have a song if you know. What song are you going to sing?
Oh, it would be a good song.
He's got a latest song. Go on then. One song to finish off. Entertainment for the crowds. Go on.
We will win, there is no doubt. Victory is ours, we'll all soon shout. In numbers we'll be so strong, you'll see. We'll fight off any tyranny. The WEF and the WHO, these we will overthrow. Join us in our fruitful quest. Put yourself to the test. Resist, defy, do not comply. That's our battle cry. We'll fight of tyranny.
Power's going to go any second.
We'll set ourselves all free.
Thanks very much. I really need to stop now. The power's going. Thanks very much for listening. See you.